Good Yontif. Among rabbis, the Yom Kippur sermon is known as the most difficult to write. Yom Kippur itself is not a day for easy words. Its prayers strip us bare. Its liturgy demands emet, accepting nothing less than truth when all else falls away. From the earliest days of my rabbinic career, I've devoted many a Yom Kippur sermon to the Jewish people's connection to Israel and to the gifts and challenges of living in the diaspora. I often return to familiar themes: our deep love for Israel, a lone democracy in a neighborhood of hostile forces, and Israel's commitment to tikkun olam, being a light unto the nations. Throughout my life, Israel's grown in many ways and given us a lot to be proud of despite relentless external threats. At the same time, Israel has faced internal moral and political struggles between religious fundamentalism and liberal values that weigh on our conscience. But since October 7th, the sheer pace of the geopolitical shifts and the emotional whiplash of the daily news has left me speechless when trying to write a sermon worthy of today. I stared at the blank page, knowing that no words could fully capture the heartache and trauma of our people. Even contemporary Israeli poets are inventing a whole new vocabulary to describe our fractured emotional reality. And then last week, a seemingly small thing happened to inspire me. My sister-in-law, Deborah, sent me a short video from her Rosh Hashanah celebration at home. She and my brother are raising 3 kids in San Francisco, and their children attend a kibbutz-like elementary school where some of their classmates come from secular Israeli families. In a 60-second video, my 9-year-old nephew, Laser, stands on a chair in front of a group of Israeli parents, and in the clearest, most innocent, most confident voice, sings Hatikva. Deborah pans the camera, first to the Israeli guests, stunned and visibly moved, and then back to my American nephew, whose joyful voice rings out with the Israeli national anthem. Od lo avda tikvatenu, ha-tikva bat shnot alpayim, liot am chovshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim. We sing it here at Temple Emanu-El every Sunday with our children. As long as the Jewish spirit is yearning deep in the heart, with eyes turned toward the east, looking toward Zion, then our hope, our 2,000-year-old hope, will not be lost. To be a free people in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. My sweet nephew reminded me that even in moments of speechlessness, hope finds a way to sing through us, sometimes literally through the voices of our children. In Hebrew, the word tikva means hope, but it also refers to a cord or a rope. This comes from the root kavah, which means to bind together, to wait, or to expect. At its core, tikva is a deep-rooted hope of the Jewish people, binding us to a vision of a better future. For 2,000 years, Jewish generations prayed from exile in predominantly Christian and Muslim lands, always vulnerable to the whims of rulers and their masses. Please, God, we prayed, one day may we return to our indigenous land where we can plant and build, take care of our own safety, and determine our own collective destiny. This prayer carried Theodore Herzl's secular vision of the biblical promise. Far from being a religious dream, it longed for something quite ordinary. A vision of Israel as a homeland for men and women to start families, have businesses, live under a system of justice, create poetry, dance, farm, and live their lives. This seems like a small wish, a reasonable prayer, an easy ask, that we just be allowed to be ourselves and be safe like so many others. But easy it has never been. On the contrary, our road through the desert wilderness from oppression to freedom has been wrought with questions about leadership and direction since our journey began. Do we have the right leaders? Are they making the best decisions possible given the realities that we face? Are they able to hold the delicate tension between defending ourselves against our enemies and remaining true to our moral values? Modern Israel was rebuilt despite the devastation of the Holocaust by a nation of orphans determined to live. The history of pogroms left us scarred, the horrors of the Shoah haunting our sleep. Yet Jews transformed themselves and their land into a flourishing civilization that today is soulful, dynamic, and vibrant. Israel is tiny, just 1% of the land in the region. Home to about 8 million Jews, surrounded by more than 400 million Muslims in the Middle East. Its vulnerability is the backdrop for wars with Arab armies, land for peace deals that were squandered, and offers of Palestinian statehood answered with intifada violence. Part of Herzl's dream has been realized in the stories of ordinary people striving to live normal lives. Israelis go to school each morning, drive buses, go to the store, argue over coffee, debate the laws, protest in the streets, serve in the army, and return home to tuck their children in at night. In many ways, they're just like us, American Jews. The difference is that in Israel, when you look for directions on Google Maps, you see the locations for bomb shelters along the way. The difference is they have an iron dome above their heads, a life-saving measure that intercepts thousands of missiles each year. Amazingly, it works 95% of the time. Sounds like a great self-defense plan, right? Yet when you consider the sheer number of missiles fired, that still means hundreds of rockets reach the ground. It's a daily reminder of the resilience that shapes their lives. I once asked Marita's aunt, who lives just north of Tel Aviv, if she'd taken up yoga, as I noticed a yoga mat in the back of her car. She laughed and said, "Oh no, I just roll the mat out every time there's a missile siren and I have to drop to the ground. I just don't want to get my work clothes dirty. Think about that. 5 years ago, when the Abraham Accords were signed and several Arab countries publicly recognized Israel and normalized relations, it felt like a paradigm of violence and isolation was finally beginning to shift. For generations, we pointed out Israel's remarkable achievements despite constant duress and said, imagine what we could accomplish for ourselves and the world if they would just let us be. Once as distant as the moon, a vision of an Israel with quiet borders and in partnership with her Arab neighbors suddenly seemed close, very close, close enough to touch. The media broadcast optimism that Saudi Arabia, with all of Sunni Islam watching, might be ready to follow suit. Game changer. Game changer, we all said. This will change the Middle East. The ripple effect will be felt across the globe. The world will be, quite literally, a safer place. In other words, a huge step towards the most coveted, prayed for, and elusive goal in human history: peace. A peace that begins with tolerance and coexistence and is allowed to grow from there. But not everyone wants this type of peace. It involves compromise and plurality and the freedom to choose. The Abraham Accords promised to forge new alliances that could shift the balance of power. By building bridges between Israel and Arab states, the Accords hope to neutralize Iran and her terrorist proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. And yet, for all that promise, the shadow of violence never lifted, and the Israeli communities around Gaza never felt safe. And on a single day, the vision of a peaceful future was met by unspeakable horror. The brutality of the October 7th attack by Hamas, in which 1,200 people were murdered and 240 people, including babies and elderly, were abducted into Gaza as hostages, traumatized Israel and everyone who loves her. Hamas's goal was clear: to shatter the promise of regional peace and derail the New World Order that was on the verge of taking shape. In their derangement, they live-streamed their crimes for all to see. Families burned alive, sexual violence, communities left in ruin. Yet out of the chaos, heroes emerged, an amalgamation of Israel's diversity: Jews, Bedouin, Druze, and even Israeli Arabs, all showing acts of courage that are the stuff of legend. Regular people ran into danger to save lives. They carried the wounded to safety, huddled in bomb shelters to protect babies, threw themselves on grenades to save friends, and comforted shell-shocked children. Humanity shone through the hellscape. We all came to see that Hamas's commitment to destroy the Jewish state was deadly serious. Empowered by their patrons in Iran, and with Hezbollah's military gathering on Israel's northern border, Hamas posed an existential threat. In this context, I truly believe that the ground incursion that Israel launched to eliminate Hamas in Gaza and to protect its people was a just war. The past 2 years have put us on a seesaw of highs and lows, attacks and counterattacks, heartache for all the death and destruction, stories of starvation, media misfires, peace plans, political posturing, demonstrations in the streets, pagers blowing up, Hezbollah falling down, violence in the name of free Palestine, Jews coming together, families divided, rising anti-Semitism, yellow ribbons, bridges built, bridges burned, recognition of a Palestinian state, talk of annexation. In the fog of war, no wonder we feel exhausted and confused. We've chanted Am Yisrael Chai in defiance, prayed for our hostages, and cried for the fallen. Personally, I have been heartsick at the suffering of the Palestinians. Some things have changed. Hezbollah is gone. Syria has a new regime. Iran is weakened. Some things remain the same. Hamas remains in power. Our hostages are still captive. Israel is still in Gaza. In modern Hebrew, the word that's used for what's happening to Jews in the world right now is mashber, or crisis. But the word mashber has deeper roots with a mystical meaning. In the Torah, mashber refers to both a breaking, like breaking up dry ground to plant new seeds, and to the birthing stool on which a woman crouches in the last stages of her labor. To be sure, mashber carries danger, but it also carries the incredible potential for new life. Sometimes crisis breaks apart what was and makes space for something new to be born. Our willingness to make room for that possibility is what we would call hope. Hope is hard to hold on to when the world feels shattered, but we don't have the luxury to despair. Hope is like a muscle. It grows only when we exercise it, and every act of hope is an act of imagination. We have no choice but to live in the tension somewhere between the reality we face and the vision we hope for. Our Proverbs remind us, Be'ein chazon yipara am. Without vision, the people will perish. This week, we're all glued to the news about the American-led 20-step peace plan that outlines a way forward. Never have the words plan and prayer sounded so much alike. For millennia, the Jewish vision has been and still is to have a place in our historic homeland where we can live in safety and at peace with our neighbors. Like my little nephew, Lazer, singing Hatikva to a group of Israelis at Rosh Hashanah, Perhaps our role as American Jews is to help keep that hope alive. Hatikva is the hope that's kept us going for the last 2,000 years. Hatikva is the cord that we can cling to when the world feels like it's breaking apart. And out of the Mashber crisis, we hold fast to the Tikva hope for an end to this terrible war, so that Jews and Palestinians can begin to rebuild. And so we sing the same prayer we've been praying in synagogues around the world since 1948. Our hope singing through us together.
Avinu Shebashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'go'alo, Barechet Medinat Yisrael, Rishit Simcha Geulatenu.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And to that we say, Amen.
Avinu Shebashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'go'alo, Barechet Medinat Yisrael, Rishit Simcha Geulatenu.
Ken Yiratzon, one day soon, may it be God's will. Good Yontif.